welcome back to another episode of Origin Stories. We have a fellow black person here today. I'm happy to see Mr. Hire. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good, feeling great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. We have our original Timothy 1000. Say hello, Tim.
Hello, Tim.
All right. So we already know the drill by now. We're just going to talk to you about how you got into magic, how you got into cEDH, and just chill talk for a little bit, and nothing serious, no scripted. We're just gonna bullshit. So Hire.
Yes.
When I first met you, if I remember correctly, you just came. Was it Nexus Team or WTF when Hire came in?
It was Nexus. It was pre-WTF.
Pre-WTF.
Or post-WTF. Yeah.
And when you came in, Hire used to always had these brews. He was always brewing decks, and we're like, my God, this is not competitive. It's fun. I'm gonna play it. I'm like, no. It wasn't good. Tim used to give you a lot of shit. I'm like, you know what? He brews. That's fine. And you didn't give a shit. You powered through it. You played at your LGS. You did this. You did that. And then one day, Hire got better. One day.
Hire was always good.
He was good, but then he became Hire now. The known Hire. There was good, and then there was now.
No, I disagree. There was always Hire.
Nah. I've seen the girls. You're blind. But anyways,
no, it was always there. You just had to chisel it out.
Exactly, and it became
like a marble
refined.
statue.
So it was refined. Anyway, so
you are picturesque.
I think Hire. When I met Hire, you were I want to say the second black person I met on this world of Discord. I want to say second. I don't know when I met Devontae.
What about Flash or LJ?
See, I didn't know those guys yet.
Yeah, you did. I
didn't know LJ.
Devontae and LJ were around with Zero Theta and Mufune and all those guys like way in the beginning.
Yeah, that was way before me. So when I came, so to me, Hire was the second black player. I was very happy. I was like, there's a black guy playing Magic. I thought they all played Yu-Gi-Oh! I was like, yo.
Oh
awesome.
yeah.
I thought they all played Yu-Gi-Oh! So I was like, fellow black person, we're gonna culture him. I'm gonna bring him into the Nexus, and he's my child. But he was not my child. He's now bigger than me, people. He has achieved more. He has gained more experience. I am just living in the shadow. But anyways, Hire, how did you get into Magic the Gathering?
Magic. I started playing Magic in 2009. So the Shards of Alara block. I live in California. I live in San Diego, and I was my best friends and I, we always played like games, like card games. So we played Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time. Actually, that was like a big thing that we did. And they moved back to the Central Coast, and when they moved back, they said they were getting into Magic, and I was like, all right, I'll get into it because you guys are getting into it, and I want to play games with you guys. So I went to my local LGS, Crazy Fred's. I'll never forget that place, Crazy Fred's, and I was like, hey, I don't know how to play Magic. I would love to learn because my buddies want to play Magic, and he was like, all right, like I can get you to the point where you're going to crush your friends in 2 months. And I was like, bet.
Done.
Let's go. So I started playing Standard. I played Standard for a really long time. And then that's where so Elves was like Green was the first deck that I played. And so Elves has always been my thing. So I brew Elves all the time with Standard. That was like a really intense age for Standard because you could cast a turn 4. You could have a turn 4 Emrakul onto the battlefield. Yeah, it was like turn 1 was like land, dork. Turn 2, you could do like land, dork, dork. Turn 3, and Elvish Piper. Turn 4, use Elvish Piper to put Emrakul into the battlefield.
Good old Pipper. Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. That was like a crazy time. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff. Scars of Mirrodin came out. It was nuts. Anyways.
Oh man, I remember
Scars of
Scars.
Mirrodin. Yeah, it was gnarly. It was a gnarly block.
When the best way to counter a mental misstep was an opposing mental misstep.
Yep. Yeah, gross. And so I played standard for a long time, and then I didn't like that standard rotated. I was really annoyed with that because I spent so much time, right?
So much income, yeah.
Right, and so like my deck immediately became extended, right?
Yep.
But it was like before modern, right? Extended. And I hated extended because like extended decks were broken, and I didn't want to invest time in old cards. That's what I was thinking at the time. And so I actually ended up just playing like the same like cards with my friends, and then I took a little bit of a break because life happens, and it was like a couple of years, and then my friends were like, "Hey, we're playing Magic again. We're gonna play EDH," and I knew about EDH, but I never like took the time to like explore it because when I learned about it, it was like before the pre-cons came out, so I didn't really have like a basis on what it could be. I just knew that you could play old cards, and at the time, the old cards were broken, and they still are, but they were like I only knew them to be broken. So, I got into EDH and I played Selvala. Selvala was my first EDH deck, and it wasn't Brostorm. It was just like big things and
Elf Ball
and kind of.
Just to be specific, we're talking about Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, correct?
Yes, sorry, Selvala, Heart of the Wilds.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and like it wasn't even Elf Ball. It was more like I played cards like Realm Seekers.
Snap! Yeah, that's a oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, and so like I was like, oh, this is a crazy card. It comes in, it's like a 20/20, and Selvala taps for 20, and then you can get lands. And I didn't really know what to do after that. I didn't know like how to storm, but I knew that I liked it. I knew that I liked something about what the deck did, and then I played a tuned Selvala deck. It was my friends, and it was insane. I was like, oh, this is what you can do with Selvala? Oh, sweet. And so I started like tuning it. I didn't know, like, I didn't have the funds to like tune it completely, but unfortunately it was mono green, so I didn't really have to do quite a bit of like shopping, right? And I learned that I liked Storm, and I liked what mono green did in Storm, and I also learned that there are certain cards that just really appealed to me, like Lurking Predators, and I played Lurking Predators in the that time card. That card's like one of my favorite cards. It's like Deadeye Navigator and Lurking Predators are two of my two favorite cards.
I like how you managed to sneak him into cEDH.
Yes. If I can't, then I'm not playing this format.
I gave you so much shit for Deadeye Navigator till you said like 2 sentences to me.
He literally, we're not going to get into that debate yet. We'll talk about high history in a minute. But yeah, just quick. You said Neoform, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm done.
Okay. All right. Okay, we did it.
If we're gonna go down this tangent of a road, when Higher came in, there was this Deadeye Navigator. It was like, Deadeye Navigator is playable. Deadeye Navigator is playable. We said, no, it's absolutely garbage. You will not do anything with Deadeye Navigator. Then I think when Deadeye finally we finally swallowed the pill of Deadeye Navigator, Darkside got printed. And Darkside made it completely broken. And it was Darkside and Kenny.
No.
Was it not how it worked?
It wasn't until Kenny, and then he said the word Neoform, and his commander is 5 CMC. I was like, you got me.
Yeah, that was the end of, but no.
That was the end of that argument.
Well, that was before, so that was when you swallowed the pill. I swallowed the pill when it was like, no, it's terrible. Like, why would you? I wouldn't even play Deadeye in a reanimated shell. And I tried it once. I think I tried it once, and I won on turn 2. And I'm like, this gospel might be real. It might be a real gospel. And then and that's when when I converted to Deadeye. But so we're talking about Selvala. Continue.
Yeah. So I played in I played with my friends, right?
Yeah.
and they were the ones that got me into EDH. And I have a couple friends. One of them, his name's Will, but he goes by Silver Dreamer, and he was the one that like I was like, oh, he was like my sensei at the time, and we would play in like really ridiculous pods. So like the pods we would play in would be like 7-person pods, right? So like one game would take the entire night. And I remember I was on Savala, so I did like turn 1 land dork, right? Turn 2 land pass. Turn 3, I played Savala and turn 2 was Savala. Turn 3 I had 4 mana and I was like, all right, I'm gonna cast Phyrexian Dreadnought, and no one had heard of that card. No one even knew Savala was like a viable deck at the time.
Right.
And I was like, draw a card, make 12 mana, and everyone just looked at me like, wait, what are you doing? Wait, you have 12 mana, wait, what? And the sirens went on for everybody. Everyone was tapped out in the 7-person pod, right? And I was like, cast Lurking Predators. And everyone was like, what does that do? And I was like, anytime anyone casts a spell from now on, I flip the top card of my library. If it's a creature, I put it on the battlefield. And everyone got real scared real quick. And I'll never forget, in a 7-person pod, Lurking Predators is king.
Is king. Yeah.
That's like combo breaker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was that really led me into liking what certain decks could do in the pace and the speed that they could do them in. And it just hooked, line, and sinkered me when it came to cEDH. I was like, oh, okay. I really like competitive Magic. I really like competitive EDH, and I have to learn more about this format. And eventually it became Brostorm. And to date this, right? This was when Brostorm was on a memory jar loops, right?
Wow.
And so
that's a long time ago.
Right? Yeah. So if you shout out to ASM, man, Chuck, man, those guys are beasts.
ASM is awesome.
Yeah, and so they were like, I read up on the primer, and I was like, okay, time to get all these cards, and that's how I got into competitive Magic.
Yeah.
All right, so on that aspect of when you got into competitive Magic, what were some of the resources you used to fine-tune your knowledge in competitive Magic?
GPs, honestly, like GPs were like a really big thing for me. So my play group were not competitive. Like it was casual-ish. I think it was more restricted because of budget more than anything else. Like I think if everyone had infinite dollars, they would just make competitive decks. But because they don't have the infinite dollars, and so I started going to LGSs that had more competitive players. Mm-hmm. And there was Crazy Freds. Crazy Freds, I'm gonna mention them one more time because they were really, really like influential in my early days of playing Magic, and they were in La Mesa, California, and unfortunately they got burned down during a riot, and it was really, really sad. And so I started going to a different shop. They there was a GoFundMe. They had a whole thing. And they're okay. They're fine. And so I went to a place called TC Rockets, and that's where I did a lot of my like playing Magic. And that's actually, so Kyle from cEDH Nexus, he would play at TC Rockets. And so,
Pipple?
Yes.
Okay.
And so they have a really healthy competitive group there, and that I got in with, and like there was like a Zur player who played like a control shell for Zur. There was at that time there was a Chainveil Teferi deck. There was a lot of like competitive players, and I really, really liked that. And I found that I really liked brewing. Like I was like, oh wow, there's all these cool cards, and you know when you brand, even now there's still a lot of cards, but at the time for me, like Wizards wasn't actively printing broken cards every set, right? So. And so there wasn't quite the pool that we have now of cards, but I just really liked it. I really liked playing like all of these different interesting cards, and I found that once I had the like perspective or the lens of cEDH, that it really narrowed my view on what I thought was good and what I thought was bad. And it was like, oh, if a game goes to turn 6, it's bad, and then if a game goes to turn 5, it's bad, and if turn 4, if you can't win on turn 4, it's bad. And then I was like, okay, it's much more about figuring out what tempo you want your deck. And once I had that understanding, I was like, oh, dude, I'm in love with this. This is like so much fun because you can do whatever.
So when you first got into cEDH, you believe there was a stigma to it? Like it was a turn 3 format. Did that try to deter you from it? From diving in?
No, dude. I was just like, that sounds like fun. It sounds like we could play a lot more games.
Right.
Because remember, I'm coming from the 7-person pod, so like my games are like 9 hours long. So I'm like,
all night,
right, So we can play like 1,000 games in the time it takes for us to finish one game. Sure, I'm down, super down. Yeah.
So when you we talked about the stigma that you had when you got into it. So when you fully got into cEDH and the community, what was the difference between what you thought and what you experienced as a new player coming in?
Sure. When I started playing more competitively, there was this. What was the power level? Now that conversation kind of died down a bit. What's the power level of your deck? Is it like 75%? Is it 99%? Is it do you have infinite combos? Do you combo? That was a big thing. Do you have combos in your deck? And when I wasn't prepared, like when I didn't have a deck that could handle other decks that had combos or had the ability to do infinite things, it was not fun. Like, it's not fun to do that because your deck is not equipped to handle like that level of speed or aggression, right?
Yeah.
And so like for me, the first time I played it, I played Selvala, untuned Selvala it was a mono blue storm deck, and I remember thinking like, this isn't fun. Like, okay, you just did a bunch of things, and okay, there's stasis now, so I can't even play Magic. Okay, this is awful. I hate this. Yeah. And then I played against that same person later when I had Selvala like tuned, and like it was way better. I was, oh, this is a much better experience.
Because they're all punching at the same level.
Exactly. It's like, oh, like even though that person still landed a stasis, like I was like, oh, but now I have ways to remove the stasis. Like,
or I'm not just untap it with my Quirion Ranger.
Yeah, like Quirion Ranger. Okay, I still have mana. I don't give a flying fuck about stasis. Like that's fine. Right.
Right? You have what you want. All right, sweet. So after you got into it, so that I want to say that you would be a pillar of the cEDH community. You've made a lot of content. People know you for, the number one is Kenris consultation, but I think I would consider you a pillar, right? A known name in the cEDH community. So my question for you is, you've seen people come in and you see people come out. What would be some of the things you tell the veteran players to help grow our community, to make sure that people aren't afraid of, oh, this is a turn 1 or a turn 2 format? And like, how do we change the culture and the stigma on cEDH?
First of all, I appreciate the compliment. I do. I don't know if I agree, but I appreciate it. The thing I would say about veteran players helping new players coming into the format is cEDH is all about playing with like the top cards and the strongest format, whatever. Right. But it's much more about mindset. And I think that once you have that mindset of like, I think it takes a while to curate. Like, I think you could give 100 EDH people the what we would consider like the top decks, and I don't believe that all of them would have the mindset to be able to manage the decks, only because you have to want to win, or at the very least have to have really good threat assessment, right? And so
threat assessment comes in with reps.
Right. Yeah. And I would say like with veteran players, like just show patience and kindness. Like just be nice. Be nice to people who are coming into the format, because you don't know like how hard it took them to get that Underground Sea. Like when I got Underground Sea, I was over the moon, and I traded for my Underground Sea. I traded a lot of cards, And
you didn't pay $35 for them?
No, I wasn't fortunate like that. And so for me, it was I finally got to get an underground C, and then you're just gonna poop on me because I made a misplay. Like, I don't want to. That doesn't sound like fun,
Right.
And so I just had a conversation with a person today, actually. So I talk about this more than I should. So Yeva is a deck. Yeva is a deck, right? Mono green deck, right?
It's a deck. Yes.
It's a deck, right? I talked about it on my podcast, and plug, right? But yeah, the late nights.
There we go.
Link in the description.
Yeah, link in the description, right? YouTube, what's up? And so we talked about it. We talked about Yeva and how people don't respect the deck. And one of the things that I brought up today when I was playing against a person who was on that deck was like, it's simply like knowing what cards are threatening in the deck because they look pretty innocuous. Yeah. And so I think for a lot of veteran players who like play the deck, they'll trash on it pretty hard because they'll think, oh, it's not doing anything, and then it wins out of nowhere because no one gave it the time to like actually assess the threats that it presents. And then when they lose, they get really salty about it, and they'll like blame the person who made the deck. And it's not that person's fault. Like, they won. They did exactly what the deck was supposed to do. And so we have to show, as like veteran players, we have to show a lot more patience because other people are coming into the format with new ideas. And the worst thing that we can do is shut down the ideas before they have an opportunity to bloom. And that's one of the things I liked about joining the Nexus is I came into the Nexus with like a billion ideas. Like, hey, this is good. Hey, this is good. And like you and Timmy sat down with me to help me make
Lord
Windgrace. Yeah, Lord Windgrace. And like, you took me really seriously. Like, you're like, okay, let's try and make this deck the best that we can make it. And I was like, oh, really? Like, that's, thank you guys. And we like sat down, and Timmy said it from the very beginning. And he's like, hey, this is a high powered deck. And I was like, no, it's cEDH. Like, no, like, you have some of the cEDH staples, but this strategy is not a cEDH strategy. Like, you have to understand that if you have the same colors in a different commander, like Prosh is a much better deck because of what it can do in the same colors, and it has a higher card quality versus what you're trying to do. Exactly, yeah. And that was like a really like insightful moment for me, and that was a conversation that led me to start making more conscious decisions when I was brewing decks to not have like just a bad deck, but have like something more sustainable.
Yeah, for me, it's like that. It's that optimization with an honest perspective and an honest insight into it. Like, are you being rigorously honest when you're building and testing higher? Did we lose you?
I'm here. I just have to get a charger.
Gotcha. Okay. So like for me, like that's kind of where that kind of falls in. Like, I mean, in theory, any deck could potentially be cEDH, but
I think on that note, I think that's one of the problems that cEDH has, is the stigma of people believe that people can come off as elitist, is one of the favorite words other people outside the community like to use, that cEDH people are just a bunch of elitists. And some people can come off that way because of the card pool. Like, they believe the card pool is the card pool, and you cannot vary outside the card pool. And I really disagree with that. Because any card can be tested, but as you just said, Tim, as long as you agree within yourself that when you're testing these cards and you realize it's not up to par, that you don't force it to be better, because
right,
it'll never be better.
And that's where a lot of the hang up happens, is that people want to force it, and they just want to force it, and they won't objectively look at it. Like,
right. Yeah, so that's and that's what a lot of things when I help other people brew decks, it's like, we can play these cards. Nothing wrong with high synergistic cards.
No.
But remember at the end of the day that these cards won't be like an ABC combo will never be as good as an A-B combo.
Right.
Because it's 2 pieces versus 3. It might be cool, it might be complicated, and it's all of that, but it's still just not.
I had a situation arise the other day.
Okay.
Somebody posted a Thrasios Timna brew that had Earthcraft Squirrel's Nest in it. Also had Blasting Station. Did not have Consult. Did not have Oracle. Did not have Tainapac. No Labman. Had Scepter. Had Dramatic IsoRev.
Okay.
The deck only ran 6 creatures outside of the commanders. And had 14 rocks. And it was posted in a deck critique channel.
Sure.
So I fired off a reply. I said, hey, check out my deck that I made. It's called Squirrel Force 1. It's similar to yours. It's a TNT brew. He also didn't have, he did have Ad Nauseam, but like no Dark Ritual.
Sure.
And so I gave him a blurb about like, you really should increase your dork talent so that way you can adequately leverage the Thrasios or the Earthcraft. Your land count's a little too high because you're running 32 lands. You probably would want to consider Consult as your, as a backup win con, and a couple other things. The only line he read was you should probably include Consult. And then he went off on me about like, well, then why would you play Godo? Why would you play all these other, like, why would you play Urza? Why would you play Savala? Because they don't have Console. Why should we just play Console? Blah, 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 blah. And of course, I lost my cool and I returned in kind and started, basically like spitting logic back at him and not necessarily in a gentle way. Eventually, some moderators stepped in and kind of put it aside.
Right.
And afterwards, and this is why I got tied up the other night, I was helping that guy with the Thrasios Dimna deck.
Right.
Afterwards, we got talking and we got voice chatting and like because the mod that stepped in was like, yo, he's got a point about the creatures. Like, your count's way too low for Earthcraft, especially like to do anything besides a 3-card 8-mana combo with it. And so then we got talking, and then I kind of started talking about using like the different combo packages and like how you slot things in, and and he kind of wanted a deck that he wanted one deck that he could play with his casual friends, and then one deck he could play cEDH. And I'm like, those really aren't necessarily compatible because either you'll be too powerful or not powerful enough. But what we can do is this: we can make a build that's optimal, create less optimal combo packages, and reconfigure the deck in a way that will power it down some to like, but still maintain its core identity, but be less efficient. Right. And less efficient in a way that doesn't feel like you're just playing a bad version of the deck.
Right.
And then we kind of talked about like this play testing versus that play testing, yada, yada, yada.
All right. So, Harry, we were talking about, this whole cEDH and how we got into it. So what would be some of the resources that you use that you would tell another new player to use to get into the format?
Great question. There's a lot of resources out now that weren't available when I started playing. Right. One resource I would use is joining a Discord server that has a focus on cEDH. There's a few of them that I think are great starter places. Obviously, the cEDH Nexus, I think, is a great place to join because there's a lot of people who play cEDH strictly, and it's all on webcam. It's all in the same format in comparison to like the cEDH game server, which I also think is a good server, but they play primarily like over Trice or stuff like that, or Cockatrice. I think the cEDH Reddit server, I think, is also another server that I enjoy. Those are 3 areas where you can really like get your like hands dirty, I guess you could say. Like you're really going to learn how to play cEDH, how to do threat assessment, stuff like that. And then outside of that, I would suggest consuming some of the content that is currently out in the YouTubes. Play to Win, Playing with Power, the Nexus has content. Obviously, the late nights, but
the late nights.
The late nights. but really the Mind Sculptors also have some really, really good content. There's a lot of really good creators out there. I'm missing a few that
there's a lot.
There's a lot of content out there. The first place, if you are really interested in getting like more information on what Magic is, there's a really good podcast that the Mind Sculptors came out with that did like a ranking of every cEDH deck. It's like 3 hours long. It's really in depth. I really enjoyed that because I think it was a good snapshot at the time of what decks are really, really strong. But more than that, it described why the decks are strong. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of people say, oh, it plays ad nauseum. That's why the deck's strong. Or, oh, it does this. But like it broke down like why is Nagila strong? Or why, and why are certain these certain decks. And I think that was a really good starting place. Yeah. And then from there might be a deck that, you might like, and there is a Discord for the deck. Like right, every cEDH deck usually has a Discord dedicated to it. Shout out to Shaper who maintains the Sylvan Library,
Commander's Library. The Commander's Library.
The Commander's Library, yes, not the Sylvan Library. The Commander's Library. They use the Sylvan Library picture.
If everybody goes to this website right here in the corner, budgetbrews.club, and you scroll down, you'll have a link to a couple different play discords, the cEDH database Discord, and to the Commander's Library, which is that central hub that he is talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And from there, once you get into that hub, that hub has a link to all of the cEDH, anything from content creators to Discords themselves that are to play. Yeah. That's a really, really good starting place. And then also to transition from like regular EDH into cEDH, I would recommend the Budget Brews Discord because they have those stepping stones on decks that you can have, that you probably have the cards for now, that you can upgrade over time because the format's really expensive, especially if you're going to play in paper at your LGS, and if they don't allow proxies.
Right, without proxies.
Then you're going to most likely need to do the Budget Brew unless you happen to be big ballin' and you have, a few $1,000. Or old. That's true. That's very true. Or been playing Magic for a long time, like Timmy.
Playing Magic for a long time is the correct term.
He used to play Magic with Moses.
Yeah. I dunked on Richard Garfield.
Okay. Yeah, you did with my help. But anyway.
Never met him.
Let's talk about I believe we share the same meta, could be wrong. But what is your current cEDH meta looking like?
Ooh, good question. Actually, I would, it's fast right now. It's very ad nause-ish. There is some stacks decks that are showing up that I think are okay, but I think that it's really speed is the name of the game right now. I feel like that's always going to be a component of the format, but there are some cards that are just really pushed that I'm evaluating, and I think I thought they were a lot less powerful than they are. A good example is the Daw3 Voidwalker.
Oh, that card is a house.
That card is like ridiculous. I didn't realize how strong it was until there was a turn where I did something, someone countered it, there was big counter war, there was a time twister involved, there's a bunch of stuff. And then right. And then the next turn, that person, like someone just activated the Voidwalker, and I was like, oh, that's right. You just got all these cards, and you can cast it for free.
Well, any one of them, but
any one of them.
But that wasn't. Yeah, it was just that any card that exiled. It was like a resting piece with like a wish claw on it.
Talisman.
Kind of card. Yeah. And it was like, okay, so survival, you have a creature in hand, you just go get a Hull Breach and cast this wheel for free. That seems like a lot, right? No, it actually surprised me also. It was these new cards.
It's at least a good hate bear for sure. That's one.
It's a solid hate.
That's like
really solid.
It's really good. Really, really good.
That's the floor.
Yeah, no, that is the floor. That is correct. What are you saying, Harry?
I was saying that there's like, you actually did something that I didn't even like think was like a consideration, and I didn't realize for 4 mana that you could do it, because normally like Hull Breacher, which is in any deck that runs blue now, I'm looking for 6 mana. I'm looking for that person to have 6 mana.
Yeah.
And for 4 mana, you can do the same thing with Winds of Change. Yeah. And when I saw that, I was like, that seems really strong. Like, that's really, really good. And so
nobody's on it, by the way, which is blowing my mind. Yeah, you're on free seas, but I'm like, why is no one playing Winds of Change anymore? When it was Winds of Change was a big thing with Notion Seas, and
it's a good card.
Yeah, and now we can do the same thing with Hull Breacher for 2 mana. I mean, I thought it was a no-brainer, but no.
For the price of a Smothering Tithe, you get a Smothering Tithe that attacks and stops them from drawing cards.
So you're saying your meta is a lot nulls and stacks. So you feel like the meta for you is try to counteract each other by stopping the fast deck and going fast.
Yeah, and that's why I play mid range.
No, that's a good count. So you said speed, and I don't think I agree with speed. That you said your meta is fast. I think the meta is greedy. I think I prefer. I prefer that one. I think you have fast decks that people can play correctly or optimally, and then you have greed, where you don't respect the other players in the pod. This is my game plan, and I don't care what your game plan is. That is it. So it's like, I was watching the game, and I believe you were in it, when there was 2 Keenans, a Kenrith, and I don't know who the 4th player was. It was Timbercrom. It was Timbercrom, Kenrith, and 2 Keenans. And the gameplay was like, we're all doing our own thing, and then when this win condition goes on the stack, we're all like, well, I did what my deck was supposed to do, and I can't interact with the win. And I was like, you know the pod you're in. Why not try to multi-interaction? But that's not the thing. I wanna play a turn 1 Keenan, and I want a turn 2 activation, and I want to win. And if that doesn't work, then I spin the wheel again. And I feel like it's all about what it is. It's just about greed. It's all about what people are trying to do. And when I first got in to Magic, like, I went on a rant for a long time with it. I think I did it on late nights. My audio was shit there, but still want to redo on that, by the way.
Of course.
But yeah, I went on a rant about.
We kind of are right here.
Oh, sweet. Good one. I went on a rant about why I believe like people should stop being so greedy when they play the game, because card draw was king. This is how I build most of my decks. If you draw the most cards, you win the game. That's not how it is anymore. You can lose the game with 30 cards in hand.
Yeah.
Because
and you can win the game with 1.
And you can win the game with 1. Like, did you have the counter spell for it? No. Well, I guess you're gonna draw a bunch of cards here and lose the game. And I don't know if I agree with it, but some people like the Norse meta. I'm trying to live in the Norse meta right now. Trying to not be a hippie. Trying not to say I'm anti-Norse. Trying to live that life.
Yo, I can't wait till I can play my Shimmer CST, man.
But yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, so, there's when I think about greed. So I'm gonna keep referencing this because I think it's important. So when I talk about greed and people playing through stuff thinking that they're invincible, right?
Yeah.
So there's a card called Heartwood Storyteller.
Yes.
Heartwood Storyteller is an amazing card. It's awful
It's
Very
really
off.
bad,
Very
but it's
bad.
amazing at what it does because it feeds the greedy people, and it makes it so that if I'm player 1 and I play Heartwood Storyteller, player 2 says, whatever, everyone else can draw a card. I don't care. I'm going to play my Magic game, right?
Yeah.
Then player 3 goes, I just drew a bunch of cards. I want to play cards too. So they play a bunch of cards. Little do they know, player 4 has been drawing all of these cards that everyone's been playing, and now is in the best spot to win. Right. And
you sure it ain't player
then,
1 that played the Heartwood Storyteller?
Right, you would hope that is, but normally player 1 doesn't have enough mana to do anything with all the cards they draw. Plus, the decks that play Heartwood Storyteller have such low card quality that they really can't like abuse it in comparison in comparison to the 4 color decks that they're playing against that have amazing card quality. So, and so player 4 is in a position where it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to try to win. And everyone is mad at the Heartwood Storyteller player, but they're the ones that fed
Played into it. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly.
And so like this really like illustrates that greed is part of what I think the meta is. And if you're able to abuse that like concept and play cards that can abuse that concept, you always end up on top, I think. So cards like really mulliganing for a fish, for an Esper Sentinel, for a Ristic, for cards that punish greed. You like Ishai, playing Ishai. I love Ishai. I think that's like such a good card. That card I think punishes greed really, really well. It's like, oh,
how does Ishai punish greed?
Because everyone's casting spells. And
Ishai, yeah.
And I think like that mentality, like I'm right now, that's one of the things I'm doing is I'm brewing a deck that says like whenever my opponents do something, I get something. And that is the premise that I went with. And I don't know what it's going to be in terms of like good or not, but I do know that I just generate value from just being in the pod versus having to actively pursue a goal. And I think that plays with the idea of greed.
So here's my kind of argument to the same greed about we should play cards that punish people is on the same aspect of even though you play those cards that punish for the greed, you will draw those cards, but the problem with multiplayer is, can you stop 3 people before it gets to your turn? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Everybody's going to be drawing all those cards, but can you control the table enough for you to get back to your turn? So I'm going to follow up that question with, what do you think of kingmaking versus... Do you think kingmaking is a term? Do you think politics is a thing that should be in cEDH? Or do you believe that we should let our cards do the talking?
I got something to put in on that part, on that thing about kingmaking. So there's a difference between being a greedy player and being a greedy player that king makes.
Okay.
Greedy players can do like risk management. They can assess their chances and their opportunity to leverage greedy plays to their advantage versus a player that would king make because they're really just rotely being greedy. Good example is like Lab Maniac Luke or Wedge, not from the Mana Source. They used to dunk on me all the time, and they would go off really fast. Their plays would be greedy, but they had such a high level of mastery of the game and of cEDH, especially at the time, that they could leverage that greed against us because they had good assessment of what the pods were able to do against them. Whereas a lesser skilled player who's playing that greedy style will just like it's a Wild West shootout or some Wile E. Coyote shit.
No, I totally disagree. Luke, he helped me to where I'm at now. Luke politics. Luke let other people do. See this guy over here in the blue hoodie? This guy has a thing with words, people, where he will allow others to do the lifting in the pod and make himself look like he's not the threat, right? And then win manipulate the other 3 players to make this other player be the third, and then win, and then soothe them down.
But that's part of that risk management, Sean.
That is not risk management. That is manipulation, and that is politics.
Really? If I can manipulate you into lowering my risk, isn't that managing it?
What? No, Tim. It is shady bullshit, Tim. That's what it is. Shady bullshit.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm going to answer your question. All right. Okay. Do I think that your card should do the talking? In the highest level of play that I've been able to play in, there isn't very much room for politics because everybody is aware of the situation, right?
Right.
Okay. In pods that aren't playing at that level, there's a much more casual air. And because that casual air exists, you then can insert more like politics into the game. And I don't think that it's necessary. I don't think it's bad, but I also don't do it unless I'm in a pod where I think everybody is up to snuff on threat assessment. So like, and a lot of the time when I'm talking about like making a deal or something like that in a game, the deals are, I would say 100% of the time, 100% of the time are not meant to mislead.
No, they're not misleading, no.
Are not meant to mislead and are meant to be like teachable moments in a good way where I'm not like trying to like mess someone over, but they will always benefit me. Like I'm never going to make a deal that doesn't benefit me. There's no reason for me to say anything if it's not going to benefit me in a game like that, right? Now, there's been multiple situations where the deal that I made was much more advantageous for me than it was for the player that I'm talking to. But because the person's trying to deal with a certain threat that seems very intense to them in that moment, which it really may not be, like a collector oof is a good example of this. And we had a game recently like that where there was a collector oof on board and people were like, oh, we have to deal with this right now. And I was like, deal with it, go for it. But it wasn't really that bad. Like,
right.
But do you really need to?
Right.
Mr.
Really
Dork Deck. Mr. Dork Deck, do you really need to deal with that collector oof?
Yeah, right. So it's like those things, like, and having those like situations. Now, in terms of king making, me and you have gone pretty deep into what king making is.
Yes.
And I think that we have a pretty similar stance on it. When we can't objectively win, we don't interact. Like, I don't have any more. Right. And Timmy too. We don't have any more win cons, and our win con or out is too unrealistic. So I'm just not going to interact at this point, even though I may have tainted pact and have gone, 75 cards deep. I'm not, even though I did all that work to try to get to this point,
right.
I'm not going to interact now because I can't win. So
my win con is 2/2 Timna beats. Unless you're at 6, I'm not.
I'm not doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. I also realize that there are some plays that people get upset about because they think that you can't win or that you shouldn't be able to win. And even though they may think that, I have more knowledge of the deck that I'm playing, more than likely. Right. And so if I think I can win, then I'm still going to go for it. I'm still going to try stopping you, even though you think, you're going to lose. Like, I know my deck really well.
There's a difference between knowing your deck so well that you can assemble these oddball lines that will help, like kind of what I did to Ian during the MCL game, versus packing your deck with cards intentionally designed to yeet people. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you touched on the iceberg of a thing that I hate, which is playing to not lose versus playing to win. And I've been in a couple situations, and I've spoken about this, like situations like these where someone will allow like a player to go through their entire win line, and then at the last second be like, oh nope, Angel's Grace, and And it's like, I get what you're doing here. I get it. But
It just makes you feel like you got a big dick.
like that, like you're telling me that that's the ceiling of that card. That's what you're telling me right now. That's
Gotcha.
the ceiling. Like
It
Like-
is, and that's what it is.
Like, there's arguments for playing Angel's Grace, and there's arguments for making that play, but you shouldn't put Angel's Grace in your deck for that reason. You should put it in your deck because you have a higher mana curve, and it helps your Nas, or you can like wheel with the Notion Thief out, play the Angel's Grace, pop the Notion Thief, and then draw everybody out or something. You know what I mean? But that's kind of the same thing. Like, they're in there for other reasons. They're not just in there. Like, people who play Trick Bind, and they're like, how many turns does that thing rot in your hand just so you can trigger an Oracle?
I play Stifle, but that's insignificant. But that's a completely different monster. But so on that aspect of it, where do you think cEDH is going with all the great cards, busted cards that are being printed right now? What do you think? Do you think we're going to go through the cycle? Like, we believe that the cycle is fast decks, stacks, combat the fast decks. Then you have mid range that plays under the stacks. I would believe that's the cycle of cEDH. Do you agree with it?
Yeah, definitely. I think to be like honest, I think that the fast decks are, and when I say fast decks, I'm specifically talking about Ad Nauseam. Those decks are getting more tools to win faster. I brewed Cody. I don't know the full name of Cody. Make an image of it if you can. So Cody is a very consistent deck. When I brewed it, I think in 25 goldfishes, I won turn 2 like 75% of them.
And this is with Profane Tutor?
This is with Profane Tutor, yeah.
Okay.
And I personally think it's the fastest deck in the format in terms of, not fastest, sorry, most consistent turn 2 deck in the format. Because of how it wins and and what you need, the tool you need. Like, it's literally, if you have Mana Crypt, you win turn 2. That's it. If you have 4 mana turn 2, you win. That's all you need. 4 mana turn 2, 3 mana turn 1. That's all you need. And so that to me is like really, that's a really intense understanding of the thing. And the only thing that I can think of in terms of directions for decks is I believe mid-range is going to have a resurgence. Like, I think mid-range is going to be really, really good because mid-range is also getting a lot of really good tools. Yeah. So I think like Esper Sentinel is really, really good. I think the Voidwalker thing's really, really good. I think that Wheels are really good. Time
to bust out.
I think Wheels are really. Yeah, I think Wheels are one of the most useful ways to continue a storm turn, and are just incredibly inexpensive in terms of mana cost and what you get from the mana cost. Cards like, obviously Wheel of Fortune, Time Twister, stuff like that. But like Winds of Change, I think is an amazing card. That card is so good for what it does. I think that being able to strip your opponent's hands, and now like there's just all these cards that can do that. But I think that if your deck is an Ad Nauseam deck, it kind of, if you have this, like, if let's say mid-range does increase, which I hope it does, because I think that's where it's going to go. Mid-range gets all of these really useful grind engines that, right? Mm-hmm. And like, it's like, and so in Kenrith, a good example. Esper Sentinel and Kenrith is crazy because
doesn't it only trigger once though?
In each player's turn, if it's their first non-creature spell, so if someone casts a spell and then someone counters that spell, you get to draw 2 cards.
Okay. Yeah.
But what's crazy is that in Kenrith you can put +1/+1 counters on Esper Sentinel.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's no longer just one mana, it's 2 and 3 and 4, and as percent all of a sudden 5/5, and it's like, well, now we have to because it's like worse than fish, right? So it's those like little synergies, and there's so many cards that can like do this kind of stuff that you really just see like this bloom of grind that I think is going to come, because there's so many cards. Magecraft as an ability is ridiculous. It's a really it's really strong, right? And I don't know if I've seen the deck that uses Magecraft to its best effect.
Not yet.
But there's cards that are being printed that I'm thinking are really broken. Like that one card that every time you flip a coin, if you win, you get 2 treasures, and how that just goes infinite with the Efreet.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, and how that Efreet also just goes infinite with the coin flip commanders.
Why is coin flips becoming a thing? Like,
I don't know.
I don't know what Wizard is doing, guys, but they're clearly pushing the power of cEDH. But I totally agree. I totally agree with what we're saying here. So we're gonna wrap this up a little bit. And
Sure.
Thank you for coming.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the projects what is a project that you're working on right now?
Yeah. So I have a podcast called The Late Nights. We do actually a very similar thing where we talk about the cEDH community and decks and playing and threat assessment, stuff like that. It's very similar to what we're doing right now. The only difference is that we don't get to see y'all beautiful faces. Look at that. Oh gosh. So that's what I have. I try to release content once every 2 weeks, most likely on Sundays. And then I play in the Major League Commander tournament with Timmy. That's every Saturday. So if you're watching this video now, this goes until the end of July.
Yeah, this won't be for like this probably won't be out for a few weeks.
Yeah, so you might be able to catch a few more weeks of it. It should be wrapping up soon after that, but that's what I'm doing right now. And then if you ever want to catch games, I'm always on the cEDH Nexus. The links will be in the Discord or in the description, I'm sure. And then I also run a few servers, run the Kodama and the Kenrick Discord.
Oh, Kodama. What a beautiful card. What a beautiful
card. Mama Kodama.
Oh,
yeah, man.
That is that's a card I did not think would be as broken as it is. Like when you read the card, it's just like, okay. Seems very casual. But then when you just
play an LED, drop a fetch land, or play a fetch land, get an LED.
Mm-hmm.
You just start doing things that you're not supposed to do in Magic, I believe.
Correct.
Once again, thank you, Hire. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the chat. If you want to find Hire, he plugged his things. Don't know if you want to plug in his social medias. That's up to him.
Hire MTG on Twitter. You want to follow me on Twitter?
There we go. Follow this guy. You will find Bruce. Follow him on Moxfield. You can. He builds decks like
lots of them.
Good
ones.
Lots. I personally think it's too much, but lots.
Yeah.
You can find us on YouTube where you're watching us. We can hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. If you wish to donate, you can donate at patreon.com, cEDH Budget Brews, and listen, we'll see you guys again on the next episode.
Bye.